Hey, everybody, and welcome. My name's Joe Gaeta, and you have found Published 90, the podcast, and I'm very excited. I have Albert Pellichet, who is an author, and you're going to love his message about the book that he wrote. And it really plays into many of you that are sitting in the sidelines about writing this book. For the longest time, maybe God's been tapping on your heart saying, Hey, I wired you to write this book, and you're allowing fear, you're allowing excuses, you're allowing the voices of friends and family say, yeah, maybe you shouldn't write a book. Or maybe it's just that imposter syndrome that's been kicking your butt. But Albert, what say you, the author of What's on Your Back Burner?
Thanks
Very
for
happy to have you with us today, man.
thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me. I appreciate. I love this topic, and yeah, it's definitely a challenge for anybody who wants to do this. That's for sure.
When you started the idea of the book, I mean, I know that when I first got that nudge, I ignored it. How long have you been brewing up this idea? How long was it on your back burner?
Really, when I go back and I look at old success journals, where I keep the notes of things
Right.
I'm doing, I'm in, I see it pop up 20 years ago. Uh, Honestly, it's like, oh, I think it was an urge that was always there. Uh, Probably the first thing that kept me from doing is like, well, what am I going to write about? What do I know? What do I know that's important enough to
Yep.
write about? I think I had an attitude, well, I need to go out and live life and experience some things before I would even have a clue of what I could write that was valuable.
Mm.
Hey, so just knocking it out, maybe 8 years ago, I did attempt to write a book. And I say attempt to, I had the manuscript done. I even had it to the point where I was sending it out to test readers to see what they thought. And the feedback was okay, it was pretty good. I was working with a book coach even at the time and getting it moving along. But when it was all said and done and I really looked at it, I felt like it was just recycled other people's ideas. And
Uh,
I ended up thinking, okay, I'm not really that passionate about this. I know it's helpful. I know this is, say, synthesized knowledge from things I'd learned from other people. I didn't feel like any of it was original. It was just taking other people's ideas that I had learned that were helpful to me, and it probably would have been okay. The guy who wrote the Daily Stoic, Ryan, can't think of it. I mean,
yeah.
he's taking stuff from 2000 years ago and repurposing it, and it's a bestseller. So I'm not saying that's always bad. uh,
Yeah.
I just know what kept me from really moving forward and getting it published and printed or even trying to was I just didn't felt like it was authentic, new or original in any way. And then it just sat there and never did anything with it.
That's a real thing, though. I mean, if it's like a conversation I was having yesterday with someone is if you're going to pick the one thing you could do in retirement and you didn't have to worry about money and you woke up every day and you were so excited to just start your day because it was going to involve this thing that you love to do, then it's not work at all. It's retirement at its best. It's a passion project of doing what you love. When you say writing a book is pretty much the same, lane of thought that if you're not passionate about what it is, and that's what you figured out, is that, yeah, this is other people's stuff. I'm just putting it in my own words. Then you figured out something that you can hang your hat on.
Yeah, if you're going to put your name on it, you probably want to feel really good about it. That's probably one of the biggest hurdles, right? It's like, hey,
Right.
I'm putting my name on this thing. This is ownership. I'm 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 putting this out there for the world to say this is my production, and it is permanent in a sense, especially now that digital files live forever. And I think there's a lot of resistance there about, okay, who am I saying that I am and what it's all about, and you can't retract it, you can't take it back.
That's
You,
right.
you can put
It's
out you can put out a new edition and correct some errors, but in essence, it's a pretty bold statement,
right?
to put that out there.
It's like a tweet or X comment or whatever it might be. Even though you may retract it in a matter of seconds, doesn't mean that someone didn't capture it thousands of miles away and said, "Ah, you said that,"
Yeah.
and now you own what you said.
And then what if you only put out one tweet a year, or one a decade? You'd probably be pretty thoughtful about, well, what am I going to send? Maybe too thoughtful because you're assigning this sense of importance to it.
Well, let's help this audience. So my audience that we're talking to, my goal in this season of my life is to help people write and publish a book within 90 days. Why 90 days? Because I think if they go past that, they won't do it. And so I'm going to touch on a few things. When you started this project, did you give yourself an end date of, okay, I'm writing this book, it's going to be so many words, so many chapters, I'm going to write so many words a day, and my plan is to be done by a certain time. Did you have any of that figured out, or did you just start writing and it ended up what it was?
Well, I did have a general idea of how big I wanted it to be. Now, I couldn't have articulated at that time how many words, that would turn out to be. That's people who are more in the book publishing industry. They think of that, oh, this is a 25,000 word book or an 80,000, 90,000. I knew I wanted to be small enough, thin enough that if somebody was going to pick it up, that they could finish it. And the reason I was that was important to me is because I rarely finish reading a book, unless it's
Right.
extraordinary. And I found personally the ones that I like are books that I can get through, and if it hooks me in the beginning and it's interesting, then I kind of look at it and I say, yeah, I can finish this. So if it's 2 inches thick or three
Yeah.
inches thick when you're looking, I just know, it's the chances of me finishing it are low. So, I'm not ashamed to say, I even put it on my bio a lot of times that, I live at the intersection of ambition and laziness. Yeah, I am ambitious. I want to do things, but I have almost an equal helping of procrastination, laziness, and avoidance and resistance. I'm just going to be honest with myself about it. So uh,
Right.
I figured my audience would also be similar, and I wanted to give them a book that they could finish, and get the gold out of it.
How long did it take you to write it? And out of curiosity, for everyone listening, what did it
Yeah.
end up being as far as word count and chapters?
So, the one constraint that was on it is I did hire a book coach. And
Mhm.
the point of the book coach was to, I'd never really written a book before, and I wanted it to be good. And I just wanted an outside perspective to shine on my blind spots. One of the books I did read, and this is a little bit of a sidetrack, but it's a book called "No One Wants to Read." Nobody wants to read your shit, by Stephen Pressfield, and that book had a big impact on me. And his point really was the book has to be reader centric. It's a book
Right.
about that's designed to help the reader. And so I hired a book coach to just make sure that it wasn't an exercise in ego and just everything I wanted to write about. I needed that outside opinion to say yes, this would be helpful. This is how you should structure it and tailor it and lay out the chapters. Now, my hiring her, it was a 6-month deal. So that did sort of put an end cap on. It's like, well, I don't want to get in here and be 2/3 finished, and then my contract ends, and then I don't have a book coach anymore. So I
Right.
did feel like there was some urgency in that, and realistically, it took 4 of those 6 months to just get the chapters out, get her feedback on it, take her points, and then go back and make some revisions to make some of the transitions between chapters smoother. Things that when you're writing, and you probably know this, Joe, since you've written a couple, you dump it on the page. It flows out of you, hopefully, and you're not in editing mode. Ideally, they say, write sober and edit drunk or something like that. Where when you're writing, you just want to write, and you don't want to be second guessing yourself. So I would just write the chapter and then send it to my coach and just let her give me honest feedback. And I wasn't really looking through it with a critical lens, like, well, does this make sense in regard to the last chapter, and is it going to be smooth going into the next chapter? But that's what I had her for. She would say, hey, you know what? Why don't you leave me hanging a little bit more at the end of this paragraph so that I want to read the next chapter? That's things I could have never done on my
Right.
own.
Little
But
cliffhanger.
yeah, it was polish. It was just a little polish
Right.
to just give a better cadence, to the reader's experience.
You know the part that I think a lot of people get hung up with is you said the first book you wrote and you never published it. You like this isn't me, this isn't right. There was a gut feeling inside you. But I read a stat recently that there's like 24 million Americans that want to write a book. It's a big number. And a big percentage of those are Christian that want to write a book. But overall, there is a segment of the population, 3%, that write their book of that 24 million. 3% will write it. Of that 3%, only 1 to 2% actually get it published. So it's like they got to the 1 yard line inches away and they didn't cross the for whatever reason. Like you had your reason with your book was that wasn't you. It wasn't congruent in the way that you wanted your first book to be. And so there's a lot of people out there that will get that far. Now you had you had more than one coach, right? You had the one that helped you on the pillars of the book. Then you needed to hire another coach, right?
Well, then I hired like a hybrid publisher that was going to take over the essentially unedited version of that book, and they hired the editor and ran a book cover design contest and logged it all in with Amazon and book wholesale book outlets, getting your ISBN numbers, just all the technical aspects. So they had nothing to do with really the content of the book. It's like once the content was there, you felt pretty good about it. Then they picked it up and took care of the rest. And so yeah, I use those two people in conjunction. And just one note, the book coach that I used to you know on this, the one I actually did publish, it's called What's on Your Back Burner.
Mm-hmm.
I did use her that first time as well when I wrote the one that was a throwaway. Uh, and I really didn't even remember it until I started working with her again. She goes, "Oh, we worked together before," and it started to come back to me. I had completely blocked it out of my mind.
You're having a deja vu moment, or she was.
Yeah, and I said, "Oh, you're right," and it helped me think about just that up and down emotional process that's involved in writing a book. And
Tell us about that. That's such a great place. Did you have any imposter syndrome? Did you have all those thoughts that I brought up earlier when I first did the introduction, where I'm not good enough writer, I've never written anything? I mean, did you have to fight off any of that?
I felt like I was a pretty good communicator,
Hmm.
and I really do enjoy writing when I take the time to do it, which is not very often. But I definitely felt like an imposter with that first manuscript because it was just retread material. Uh, Now, again, it was helpful stuff that I had found. I was essentially taking, four ideas that were beneficial to me and then putting them in order and saying, hey, if you're stuck in your life and are you trying to find a way out of being trapped or living small, do these same four things I did, but none of them were my invention or, anything I had sort of made my own in any sense. So yeah, that was total imposter, and I did not want to put that book out. I remember one of the pieces of feedback I got from a guy who had published his books, He said, it's good. It's nothing I haven't heard before, but I like the way you put it together in a new way. So he was acknowledging the truth of what I knew. It's not original, but you are putting it together in an original way. And I'm sure I could have put it out there and it would have been all right. It wasn't enough to have the passion about it. Now the second book, which was really my first book, really came from working with clients. What I was really doing most of that time leading up to that was holding men's retreats, and I would take a small group of guys, like 8 guys. We would go somewhere for the weekend. It was a personal development oriented, and I was just sharing different processes that had worked for me, things I was discovering, and so I was learning while doing. And it was at the end of the retreat, my last one that I had at the time. And one of my clients knew I wanted to write a book. And he said, Albert, that's the book. And I said, what do you mean that's the book? He says, what we just did this weekend, he said, if you wrote this down as a follow along process that somebody could do this on their own, he goes, that would be a worthwhile, valuable book. So it didn't really occur to me personally. It was coming from someone else, and I started thinking about what he was, telling me, and I thought it was a good idea. I said, "Wow, I would have never thought of that." But how many people can I possibly get here to this retreat? 8 at a time, and I would do 2 or 3, sometimes 4 a year. It's not really reaching that many people. But if this
Right.
process could be put in a book that somebody could do it themselves or begin to do it themselves, and then if they got stuck, called me, and I'd be willing to help or take them on as a client. I said that is a good idea. I wasn't sure if someone could do it without me guiding and facilitating the process. That was the part that was unknown to me, but I did know the process really well. And so,
I
yeah,
mean, but that, for anyone who's listening, that's how a lot of authors end up going from writing to speaking. Their message has now become a platform, and speaking could be this microphone that's sitting here in front of me. It could be in a podcast situation. It could be in doing Zooms and having conversations with a Facebook community. It could be a lot of different things. It could be on stage, where you're taking your message across the country. Whatever way it is, the book is the foundation of that. I think
and
I think it's so important and to hear that.
yeah, it is. And look, there's truth in that. There's big truth in that. Probably this is one reason that most people should become re-inspired to write the book. I'll tell you, it definitely gives you more credibility, right? Uh,
Hmm.
People do respect published authors. They do. It's like, oh, this person took the time to, really you're taking the time to go through what you know and synthesize it and put it down in a easily digestible way for someone. I mean, that's a real act of loving kindness in my mind. When I read a book now, especially knowing what it takes to do it, I feel just so much appreciation for the generosity that that person took to take the time and put the effort in there to, the old quote, it's Mark Twain. It says, if I had more time, I'd write you a shorter letter. Uh, it's like somebody who's has the more time to to consolidate and concisely explain something that they know, some wisdom they want to impart for the
Right.
benefit of another person. I think it's a super generous act in that sense. And so, yeah, it's a worthwhile endeavor. So that goes back to the credibility in the stage. People are going to at least listen for 5 minutes, and if what you're saying is seems helpful or beneficial to them, then you have a good chance that maybe you really can help them with what you've written and increase your standing at the same time, simply to have a broader audience to hopefully help more people. If it can help a small circle, it can probably help a larger circle as well.
You brought up a point of when you're reading someone's book now, the appreciation and thankful heart that you have for them because Hey guys, this it as easy as it can be. It's not just that easy. And have the right coach, to have the right people to help you with the imposter syndrome, and when you get stuck and just where you're hitting a wall and you need to know, okay, am I doing this right? Do I need to pivot? But the one other thing that it really does answer to, and this is what it was for me, is the night before I started writing Average Joe: The Journey Home, I said to my wife, because this was, I felt like God was really leaning on me to write this layman version of a 365-day journal that included 365 days of scripture. And I'm not a theologian, I'm not a church leader, I'm average Joe, I'm one of you. And I said to her, I have to write the book. And the reason for that is I don't want to get to heaven and we're all held account to what we've done on earth. The good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, all of it. That's biblical. We're all held accountable for what we've done. And I know that I'm going to be in heaven because I've accepted Christ in my heart. I know that. But I didn't want to get to heaven with Father God saying, hey, awesome job, but why didn't you write the book? And and I said to my wife, because I'm Italian, and guilt will really is a lever that Italians use in their life. That Italian guilt that I didn't want from Father God, it was like and not that God would guilt us, but I did not want to live this life with leaving anything on the table. It's in fact why I am at 61 with a crew of grandkids and married 40 years this year. I'm feeling more alive now than ever that I have a mission that I have to accomplish. I know I have more books in me. I know you have more books in you. And one of the things I learned from Chris Widener, who wrote a book with Jim Rohn, and it was called 12 Pillars. And I reached out to Chris right after Christmas. I know this because it was actually right after the first of the year of 2025. So if anyone's listening 5, 10 years from now, it was January of 2025, where I was a big fan of Jim Rohn, but he's passed away years ago, but I still listen to his content in YouTube format. I love Jim Rohn and what he had brought to the table as far as helping people push past their own insecurities and their own lack of thereof of belief in themselves. And when I was cleaning up for Christmas, Albert, you appreciate this. I'm in my garage, I'm putting Christmas tree decorations away, and there's the book sitting on my garage shelf, and it's not with all of my other books in my office. And I'm like, and I grabbed it, and I hadn't read that book in years. And I said, well, Jim's dead. God bless his soul. I'm going to try to reach out to Chris on LinkedIn. So I found Chris on LinkedIn and I sent him a note, introduced myself. I said, Chris, I just found your book in my garage. I'd love to have a chat with you. Within minutes, he sent me a message back, love to chat. And so we did a call very much like you and I are doing right now. And we're talking, he's written 31 books, not to mention the books that was the writer for. Help me fill in the blank there.
Ghostwriter?
Ghostwriter. He was the ghostwriter for John Maxwell as well.
Okay.
And I said, what do you have as far as great advice for someone to write a book? And he says, Joe, many years ago, and it really alludes to what you were just saying, I had someone tell me, Chris, don't write thick books. People don't have that kind of attention span. So he started writing books that were between 25 and 35,000 words. He didn't go beyond that. He kept it to where, like my last book. Here's my last book. It's for you. It's a 25,000 word book. Wrote it in 5 days, and that's my. I think you wrote yours pretty swiftly too. And that's not to impress anyone. No, it's to impress upon you. When you have something that's passionate in your heart, as soon as you sit down and you make that decision that you're going to write it, watch what happens. And that's when, yes, you're going to need a coach in your life to help guide you through, because you're going to move swiftly once you answer the bell. But what he said to me that day, that's why that book's 25,000 words. I was like, I don't want to write a thick book. And I don't like reading thick books either. And that's not to say to anyone, you can't write a thick book. What we're saying is, if you've got a message that you can compact and transform someone's life, then you've got something. What say you?
Yeah, so I mean, we all know attention spans have shortened over time. Now that you've written a book and I've written a book, I can't tell you how grateful I am that somebody would be willing to invest the time it would take to read it. So again, now I'm appreciative of asking for people's time to read it. Now, I'm making a big promise that they read it, their life is going to dramatically change. So I am getting something back, but I think you do have to be mindful in this day of age that, people are just there's a lot more information. So they're going to be more judicious about how they spend their time and what information they select that they want to ingest, and how
Right.
much time and treasure and resources are they willing to spend to get that information. So you've got to at least give them some bang for the buck, that they're going to get something out of it that makes it worth doing the exercises. And you're asking
So
a
we,
lot. You're asking a lot of someone.
I know it. I know it. And when it's like if you said to someone, "Hey, I need you to go in your office and I want you to write this particular on this particular subject, and I need it by the end of the day," and you don't know anything about that subject, it's going to be a struggle. What the world is waiting for, and this is getting back to my point about making God smile. And I have this vision, and Albert, it could be really way out there, but I envision Father God with his arm around me, looking down on earth. And beams of light are coming from earth, and he's got his arm around me. He said, "That's why I wanted you to write it. Your legacy didn't get stuck in you.
Mhm.
You're still changing lives for years to come.
Yeah.
You wrote the book." And that's my message to anyone who's listening is, the book isn't about you. It's
No.
it's about the people you're about to impact for years and years to come.
Yes, it's a selfless contribution to humanity. And, I've always been a self-help junkie, and have been reading positive development books, personal development books, business development books, really since my teenage years. My parents were in Amway when I was a teenager, and that was not really their personality. But if you've ever known anybody involved in like multi-level marketing, man, I'd say the surprise benefit of it is there's just so much positive thinking and personal development stuff. And I just
Right.
happen to catch it in the back seat of the car, as they're listening to Zig Ziglar and Jim Rohn and people like that, on cassette tape. I think that's probably what got me interested in it. But in one of my lowest moments of my own life, which was about 12 years ago, when for unexplained reasons, my businesses seemed to be failing and I didn't know what was going wrong. And it's just like, if I had to tell you the truth, even 2 weeks before all the things started going wrong, I wasn't happy deep at my core. I was kind of miserable and grouchy and had a bad reputation around the house. My wife would say, "Stay away from Dad. He's grouchy today."
Yeah.
And one day I went into one of my businesses, and it was somebody telling me who rented a lot of space from me, and I was already barely breaking even, and they told me they were moving out, and I was just like, oh,
Oh,
man. I'm going to go home and be depressed for the next 3 days. And they're, oh, Mr. Albert, it's not that bad. You're going to be okay. And I was like, yeah, yeah, sure. Good luck to you in your future, but I'm going home to be depressed. I was determined. And there was a strategy of mine. What I would do when I was demoralized and overwhelmed and confused was I would retreat from the world essentially and force myself to the bottom, so that I was so miserable that I was even, looking at myself felt like, okay, this is enough. This is pathetic. Get back out there and start doing things. And it was just like a cycle I had repeated throughout my life. But I fully planned on taking 3 days to drive myself to the bottom. So I come home, I go lay out on my hammock on the porch, and after about 30 minutes, I said, I just don't want to do it like this time. I'm going to go look for something uplifting, to read and just snap myself out of it instead of putting myself through 3 days of misery and torture. And I went back in and I had this entire shelf full of self help books that I had bought at a book fair 7 years before. I hadn't pulled one single one off the shelf in all that time. They were just sitting there waiting for me. And then I looked for one, a small one that, would be quick and easy to read. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Og Mandino.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
pulled, it was the greatest miracle in the world.
Yep.
And so I pull it down, I'm reading it. It didn't take long. I'm at chapter 6. And the first paragraph, I think, in the chapter said, I know why you weep. You weep for all of your potential that you traded for security.
Mm.
And Joe, when I read that line, I couldn't even read another page. I can still feel like it stabs me in the heart to read and hear the truth of that. I knew when I read that I had just been playing small, playing it safe, that everything I had done in my life up to that point, and look, I was 48 at the time, was just all about trying to create a sense of security for myself. But I had to admit that, man, I probably passed up on so many opportunities, uh, so many things I could have done, and it hurt to see the truth of it. And I tell you that story, I went out the next day. It was a turning point in my life. It was really, honestly, the beginning of my spiritual journey that led to everything that came since. But I dug into a little bit of the background of Og Mandino, and at some point in his life, he felt like a failure. He was had attempted suicide, I think, a handful of times. He was really at his bottom, and he went into a public library, very similar to the urge I had to reach out for a book. And he started reading, I think he started reading The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. And he left that library and went on to be a best-selling author and write at least 30 or more books.
Yeah.
One of one of which was sitting on my shelf in my time of need, and I grabbed it and it turned my life around. So think about this, right? I bet you Norman Vincent Peale, who wrote the book that ended up in the library that helped Og, and then Og became inspired and wrote a book that helped me, and I was like, okay, it's my turn, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to write a book that helps whoever needs it when they come along. And as you said, I think Og Mandino was alive when 14 years ago. I know he's passed away now, but yeah, it's like my responsibility to pass it on. I mean, think of the beneficiary we've been from the wisdom of other people throughout our lives. And if you have it within you, if you're watching this podcast, and certainly you're somebody who at least has this inkling, this back burner calling, to write the book, and it is a message, it's a command, it is God
Mm.
calling, it's God calling you to do it. Otherwise, that inkling would not be there. Now,
Wow.
now
It's
look,
been a while since I've heard Og's name, but you're so right. Such powerful writing.
yeah, it's simple, little simple parables and stuff, but that book, it did literally change my life. That chapter, that one sentence, it just brought it all into perspective. Oh yeah, this is what I've been doing, seeking security and not really taking chances for
I
going.
I think Rick Warren, who wrote Purpose Driven Life, here, this book made him millions. In fact, he took the money and paid back 20 plus years of salaries as the pastor of Saddleback Church out in California. So he knew his mission was a God mission. And when all this money came in, but the very first sentence was, "It's not about you." And believe it or not, most everyone who's ever read that book, that's the sentence they remember. It's not about you. As I said a few minutes ago, this book, your book, my book, anybody's book, really isn't about them. Now, there's people out there that write a book for ego. They got, they may, but the ones that are writing from their heart and they have to get it out. And if they don't get it out, a part of them is going to die inside. A part of them is going to disappoint their Father God. As you said, that command to write the book. I'm going to share something with you real quick. I'm going up here in my cabinet. So, Wednesday morning, I went to a Bible study, and there's one of my friends here locally bought about 10 of my books and started a men's Bible study using Average Joe, The Journey Home. And lately, Albert, I've been questioning, because it's not a bestseller. Now, you and I have talked about how you could make a book a bestseller. That's a whole other podcast, because there is a hack.
Yeah.
You can make your book a bestseller. That's not the question. But that imposter syndrome lately has come to me with nobody's buying your book and it's not that popular. Nobody really knows about it, but you know how to write it and you know how to teach about how to write a book. But is your book really going to have any impact? So I go to this Bible study on Wednesday, and there's a gentleman sitting at the end of the table. He's frail, he's 72, his wife is 71, and she's been in the hospital for 47 days straight battling cancer. He's battling his own cancer, and he has got his Average Joe book opened up. And at the bottom of each page of Average Joe, I have lines where you can make notes. He had his book opened up, and his book was nothing but notes of what he wrote down. He didn't know I was in the room. He didn't know who I was. Nobody told him, "Hey, Joe, the guy who wrote the book is in the room." And he has the book open, and it's his turn to talk. And he says, "I feel like Joe's writing to me. I'm in one of the darkest times of my life. My wife is sick. I'm sick." And he says, "I've never read scripture the way that he's presenting it to me, and it's speaking to my heart." And about that moment, the guy next to him nudged him and said, "That's Joe sitting over there." And he looks over at me, Albert. He looks at me, and he has the book basically in his hand, and he says, "Joe, you have," and the tears are rolling off of his face. "Joe, this book has been everything to me. You're helping me get through this." That's why God sent me to that Bible study that morning as a reminder of, you didn't write the book for you.
You know, yeah, you needed that reminder, right? You needed to go to the Bible
Yeah,
study
with like
to see what.
right, right there and in my heart.
So it's just like any other things where you're putting yourself out there. How many likes do I get? How many views am I getting? How many people are watching my YouTube channel? How many people are buying my book? All that's ego.
Right,
You know,
right,
I mean, look, truthfully, probably anybody who's still watching really does have it in them. They want to write a book. If you knew you could go through the whole thing and literally change one person's life completely, would you still do it? Would
yeah,
you? You know,
absolutely,
I would too,
yeah.
because what else am I doing? You know what I mean? I
What are you gonna do with your life?
it's like your kids don't want to hear your wisdom. I'm sure
No, no,
you can impart a little bit. You probably can't really share your wisdom with your wife. She doesn't want to really hear it anyway. But there is someone out there who really needs it and
right.
will listen. And So I've never been bothered by, uh, the metrics of it.
Yeah.
There's
Good,
so
good for you.
there's so much joy and fulfillment just completing a project like this that it's so personally fulfilling, regardless of of what ends up happening with it. But you will get feedback. Also for you personally, Joe, uh, I stay motivated. The fact that I don't have a huge stage, I'm not famous, but it's one of the reasons that I pursue, invitations like this to come on your show and talk to however many people are going to end up listening
Yeah.
to it.
I think there's 5 people that, I
Fi-
think I
fi-
know 5 people. You know 5 people?
yeah, if you were sitting in a living room with 5 people, sincerely, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, that's a big audience. Uh,
Yeah.
so
And
it
then, and
it keeps me motivated to keep putting myself out there, small or large venues, because you just never know who's going to be in the room that's just waiting for your message. And you've probably heard that a million times, but there is truth to it. Let me tell you this little interesting story. So
sure.
the essential the process in my book, and this is why it's so great for potential authors, is it gets beyond the reasons that you would give me if I ask you, okay, why haven't you written your book yet? If I ask you why haven't you written your book, which is what's on your back burner, to tie back into the title, you would say, well, I don't really have the time, I don't know if I'm a good writer, it may be costly, and I don't have the money for a book coach. You're going to come up with all of these, what I would call damn good reasons. They're plausible reasons. But what I do in the first step of my 3-step process in the book is say, okay, let's imagine you've written your book and it's published, it's written, it's out there. Now, what I want to know is, what is it that you don't like or concerns you now that the book is written? And when I ask people for these answers, this is when you get the surprising answers that they weren't thinking about consciously before they do the first step in the process. Because what my premise is that if there's something like this, something big, something personal, a contribution, a creation that you want to do, but for whatever reason you haven't done it, no matter how long you've been thinking about it, what I'm proposing is that there's an inner conflict within you. Your conscious will says you want to do it and you have the urge to do it. But what you don't know yet is that there's another part of yourself that doesn't think it's a good idea. And when you get in touch with the part of yourself that doesn't think it's a good idea, and you see the reasons that part of yourself comes up with, it's going to be things like, well, I put this book out and I'm being criticized in public that I don't know what I'm talking about. So it could be, that sort of a aversion to criticism, or it could be real stories are involved. And you're like, oh, well, um, now I'm concerned that the people who are in my book, even if I used another name, are going to come back and say, hey, why did you, make me look bad in that story? Like, I know that's me, and everyone who knows this is going to know it's me. It's, again, more negative feedback coming from other people. Or it could be on the opposite spectrum. Is I sell 1 million books, and I really feel on some level that I'm bad with money, and I'm going to mismanage it, and I'm going to end up in a worse position than I'm in now. It's subconscious, programmed, hidden beliefs that you don't really know this is what you're thinking. But these are the reasons, the real reasons why the book isn't written yet, or why you haven't taken more action. And I've just done this work for so long with so many people that no matter who shows up, in my office or on a Zoom call or at a retreat, if I take them through this process, they're stunned by the answers to that second question, which is, what is it that you don't like? What are you concerned about now? What bothers you about having completed this goal? And the reasons, there's 20 times more reasons for that question than asking somebody the first question is why you think you haven't done it. They're only going to be able to come up with 4 or 5 or 6. But when you get down to the inner conflict, they're going to have 100 or 200 reasons why they think it's a bad idea. And so this is what keeps people from moving forward in any sort of goal-oriented approach. Okay, so that's all the setup to tell just this little anecdote. One of my clients, he'd been to my retreat, he read my book, he did the exercises himself. Felt like he was just doing things, taking action, moving in the direction of his goals and everything. And he was, reporting back to me. And of course, as an author, you feel good when you get positive feedback and say, man, this book is amazing. This is really helping me. And, like, oh, thank you so much. And that's when you're getting acknowledgement that what you're doing is good, right?
Right.
But then he ended up contacting me and said this. His 17-year-old son, is a senior in high school, was taking the ACT test to get into college. And he knew his son was smart, had always made good grades and everything. And he decided to take one of the worksheets and ask his son, okay, put him in a position, you made an incredible score on your ACT. What is it that you don't like about this now? And what his son admitted to himself and to his father was that if he made a good score on the ACT, it meant his choices of which colleges he would go to would be broader and probably involve him moving out of the state and away from his mom and dad. Now, he's the last child of, I think, maybe 5. And so it was this inner conflict between succeeding and achieving that he knew he could, but that might lead to the separation and moving away from home, which is something he didn't want to do. So what he was doing was self-sabotaging his ACT scores so that his only choice would be to go to the local college, which in this case is LSU in Baton Rouge. So the father was blown away. I was blown away on multi-levels. One, that the dad got something out of it, but then used the information in there to help someone else and really get to the bottom and really help even a teenager see sort
Right.
of the potential of self-sabotage. Now, look, think about anybody listening to this call, anybody who's an adult. I mean, me, I'm going to admit it too. How many times have we self-sabotaged ourselves out of this exaggerated sense of fear of even achieving our goals? This is what keeps everybody back, Joe.
Yeah.
This is what keeps authors especially from writing a book, because it's so personal. Like we started earlier in the call, it means so much. You're putting your name on it. You're saying, this is what I believe. This is what I'm promoting. This is what I'm putting out there. It's attaching. There's great risk with that. It's a personal creative endeavor. So these inner conflicts play a greater role because there's more perceived risk, personal risk, reputational risk, identity risk, even relationship risk of how people are going to react to this.
Yeah.
But all of that shouldn't be enough to keep it from happening if you're being called to do it.
I know it. And we know that all those excuses. I mean, Earl Nightingale, I don't know if you've ever listened to Earl. I mean, he was actually older than my parents. My parents were born in the 30s. I think Earl was born in the 20s. Um, in fact, he's one of the survivors of Pearl Harbor. And he went on to do this famous message about the unconscious mind and what we feed our mind. And we give it good seed and we give it bad seed. Our mind is fertile. It's ready for whatever we give it. If you want to plant poison, poison's going to grow. If you want to plant a fertile seed that represents growth, it's going to grow. Well, we used to teach our Sunday school kids back in 5th and 6th grade when they were, it was called Club 56. I would even say to them back then, whatever you put your attention to is going to grow. You want to put your attention towards what you can't, guess what? You're going to get more of that. If you put your attention towards what your potential is, watch what happens. And I think the best message we can end up on today, I think we've got it. We talked about this before we hopped on. We could probably go beyond an hour. We want to keep it under an hour, but this is about helping people really move off of their rear ends and eliminate the excuses and get this book written. I know that you spent a good amount of money for a couple coaches to get that book written. I think in excess of 20 grand, something was that something like that, right? And what we do at Publish 90 is we wrap it all in one. You don't have to go to several coaches. We do the mindset coaching. Number one thing people need help with. We coach them throughout a 90-day process to get the book written and published in 90 days. It includes the editing, it includes the formatting, it includes the artwork for the book, it includes the ISBN numbers. You're like, what is that number? That's the second time it's mentioned. So on the bottom of every book, there's that your little QR code, your ISBN number. We include all that. We package it so you don't have to go look for everything. Our in-house editor is Christian. I mean, we are on our game and we're ready to help you, and we do it for under 10 grand when there's a lot of other people out there. And by the way, if you think, well, I can write my own book doing AI, God bless you and good luck. This is about a heart written book, not artificial written book.
And let me tell you something real quick on the AI. Amazon is now scanning books for to see if they're written by AI, and they're rejecting them because
Mm.
they don't want their whole platform flooded by AI projects. So you can go through all that trouble, even though
Yep.
it's less trouble if you get an AI to do it, but it's probably going to get rejected. Just give you a
Right.
head. They're on it. They're pretty good.
And the most important message around AI is you can use AI to help you in build your model of what you're looking at. You can't write the book for you. I mean, it can, but it's
It,
going to be, as
I,
Albert
you,
said.
the guy you talked about at the Bible study is not going to feel like AI is talking to him.
Yeah, I mean,
That's something that's got to be done by a human writer. And I like what
right.
you said about that too, because one of the tips that I did get when I was writing, it's right as if you're writing to one person, and you're talking. You're not talking to a broad group. You're
It,
talking to one person, and
yes.
that does help.
And that is one of so I have, Publish 90 has a playbook that our clients get. And in the playbook, one of the plays of the book is write to one. Don't write to the many. Write to that one person, just like Albert and I are having this conversation one on one. And he says, Joe, I love pizza so much I want to write a book about pizza. And I'm like, so do I. My parents owned a pizzeria for 40 years. And now he and I are each other's one reader. That's who you want to write to, is the person on the other end who is as passionate about what your message is as you are. And when you can combine that with your story and Katie bar the door, you're going to have yourself a great book. I'm not talking about a bestseller. I'm talking about a great legacy. Because as I said in the beginning of this call, there are ways that people can become bestsellers by really doing a crowdsource of all their friends and family. They all go buy the book for $1, and all of a sudden you have now made it to that status. I wasn't looking for that, and by the grace of God, when I'm dead and gone, maybe the book finally does do that, but only if it was God's intent, right? So. Albert, anything you want to finish us off on? I mean, your book talks about aspirations, about this simmering flame that you mentioned in your book, renewed passion that may have been there from years ago, and how do you bring this book to a full boil? How do you put a bow on today's message? What do you want to say to everyone?
I want to say this. First of all, if anybody does want to get in contact with me or buy the book, backburnerbook.com will take you to those two links. Um, what I want to say that if this is a calling, and I'm just going to assume this is a calling for you, I got to a point, and I know you will too, where if you're sitting on wisdom, a book filled with wisdom and information that's helpful to others, and you don't do it, there comes a point at your life where although it's a tough kind of, I don't want to say tough, but it's work, right? To take it from that and get it out and get it published and get it into people's hands. There comes a point where not doing it is more painful than the effort it takes to do the work. And at some point, you might not even have the resources or the mental faculties to do it. And then it's going to be too late, and you will die with that regret of never having done it. So I want to say, in a weird way, I almost wish for people that you could hurry up and get to the point where it's more painful not to write it.
Yeah.
And let that, if that's how you have to do it, know that
Yeah.
that time is coming, and let it be motivation to just push you forward and just to get through the discomfort and the fear and all of the resistance of just putting the work out. It's such a relief. The day it was done and the day I got my first copy, you can't even describe the relief. It's like,
It's
okay,
such a great feeling.
yeah, this is a major thing. It's done. And then I actually wouldn't have cared if anybody had read it. Just getting it done felt so good.
It is such a fun, relieving, inside your heart, you're giving yourself a high five. God's giving you a high five. As Albert just finished off with, this isn't about how many people read it. It's about it's finished. It's done. Your legacy is written. And watch what happens. Now you've written that one. All of a sudden, that burning desire inside you says, I think I got another book in you.
Yeah, what's
And
next?
then maybe something else comes up. Thank you so much, Albert. We appreciate you all listening in. Go. I will have the links below for you to grab everything regarding Albert, and he's in tune. He's in my age group, so we've lived a lot of life, and now we just want to share back with you so that you don't make some of the toe stubbing mistakes that we've made. So may God bless you, and we'll see you on the other side. Take care.